the foundations, the roots of the mountain, the rising of the crisp moon in the winter sky, the image of the sea goat transmuting wisdom from the deep waters and into the very bones of the creations we make. There's something powerful about Capricorn ushering us into the new calendar year each time. What are we in essence? Are we a set of goals, a projection of the identity we think will keep us safe, a legacy, a mystical over there that we might reach one day? Or are we something truer, deeper, more beautiful? The tiny creations we make at midnight while the family sleeps, the moment we exhale walking in the woods, the knowledge that simply creating and taking one step at a time is already everything. Capricorn often gets prescribed the role of being about outward performance, career, accomplishment. But in its depth, this is the sign about the deep respect we give our souls and our visions, and the foundational structure that holds us through the heavier questions and seasons of life. Instead of giving away our peace to the mystical future, why can't we use the focused and dedicated energy of Capricorn to start hearing ourselves now? Well, hello there, my beautiful friends, my fellow sparkly space blobs, creative beings, deep divers into the spirit. I am so happy to have you in this space once again, and today we are going to be setting ourselves up for the sacred time of Capricorn season. And Capricorn is another one of those signs that I think always needs a little extra support and love because its reputation in the pop astrology world is so much based on capitalism, essentially. I would say if there's one sign that kind of holds that role as being about traditional capitalism and the way we kind of know it today, it gets put on Capricorn, which is really unfair and unjust because this is an ancient idea. Capricorn is connected to this image of the sea goat, and the sea goat is such an interesting image if you just Google image search it, because you'll see this fishtail with this goat torso, and it really combines this transmuting quality of the hidden world, the watery intuitive world, with the practical. And how do we bridge that gap? How do we work between the two modalities? And Capricorn has also felt very precious to me too, because if you think about it, it always ushers us into each new calendar year, whether or not we really follow calendar as our number one way of keeping time. It's still a very much a transitional doorway energy that helps us to set a foundation for the year ahead. And I think for me, because of its grounded quality, I always think of Capricorn as connected to the roots of the mountain. What are those roots? What does it feel like to be in connection to my foundation? Does it feel like something that I can stand upon and feel at peace, that allows me to sleep at night without feeling shame and fear and guilt and worry and trying to people please everybody? Or do I feel like I'm kind of on shaky ground where I'm constantly trying to revert back to a past version of myself? There's a deliberate clarity to Capricorn that I think associates with that idea of the stability of a really strong inner parent that is very clear about core values, really clear about what is important, what is your priority in this season of your life, and setting the stage in that way and thinking about Capricorn in that way. It's not always just about practicality and saving your money and self-discipline and make sure that you're motivated to leave a legacy, and who are you in the world, and are you important in the world, and are you on the world stage? None of that is going to be feeding the soul, right? How do we connect with Capricorn in a way that feeds our soul? And for me, that is in taking seriously our needs and also thinking about our priorities and our core values and how we want to self-parent into a place in life where we feel like what we're doing in our day-to-day reflects those priorities and core values, and like we're not constantly undercutting ourselves and feeling like we're having to overspend our energy and constantly compensate somehow for who we are. And in that way, I think Capricorn can really set us up for empowering and beautiful seasons ahead. One thing that always strikes me about Capricorn season every year is that I often find this is a time where I'm kind of coming back to myself and I'm really taking a look around. I'm assessing what's important to me. I'm thinking about what my big dreams are and where I'm wanting to make shifts or adjustments that really take care of me and nourish me so that when I'm moving into a new calendar year, I feel like there's some internal love going on in the way that I'm planning and plotting and visioning my life. And so it is very much a season of big vision. But I was thinking about this whole idea of manifestation culture. I'm actually not a big critic of that. I think it can be really beautiful. Many of those tools are very powerful and it can be just really fun to play a little bit and explore ourselves. But one thing that often comes up is this idea of the quantum leap, right? You'll see that in video titles all across the internet. How to really quantum leap. If you want a quantum leap, do this, and a lot of times we'll think that means this big life shift, right? Like that it's just gonna be this giant overhaul and suddenly we're on a different timeline and we're a completely different person wearing yoga pants in the city, driving a fancy car or something. I don't know. I don't know what people are supposed to dream up because I think of very strange things going on in my world. However, quantum physics is about tiny interactions, right? And so a quantum leap is about tiny shifts. And I love that actually. When I started to think about that, really, I had seen a video a few days ago that said something about quantum leaps, and I was thinking that's something really tiny. It's not the overhaul of life. It's not the calling it off and burning it all down to the ground. It's like these little tiny shifts that happen throughout the day. And every one of those little tiny shifts changes the way our foundation feels. And it took so much pressure off, I think, for me as I've been kind of exploring what I want to express next, what I want life to look like next, and getting really honest with myself about what I need physically and emotionally and in community. I think I'm going to be going through a lot of changes over the next couple of years in my lifestyle and where I'm at in the world. And I realized that for me, those little quantum leaps, we're talking tiny, are where it's at. And I actually think that really connects to Capricorn as well, this root system foundation idea. Because as we're envisioning and we're thinking about how we want to feel, even the tiniest shift in how we're treating ourselves, how we're treating our visioning, is essentially a quantum leap, right? We are essentially tapping into a different frequency of ourselves in the tiniest of ways throughout our day. And I think that's really encouraging. And for me, it's often about these little tiny practices that I do throughout the day, just checking in, saying a phrase that feels really calming to me, feeling into my solar plexus and feeling safety there. These are little quantum leaps. And I want us to think about this Capricorn season as a really, really powerful time of a whole bunch of those happening throughout our mundane days. And as we emotively connect to that, how that shifts the way we think about our next chapters of life, and to play around with it a little bit and relax into it. The other thing that came up for me that's really, really vivid and clear as I've been thinking through Capricorn season is that the phrase, "don't sacrifice yourself for your goals," came up. I think it's very tempting, and I'm in this just as much as anybody else. When it's Capricorn season and it's about foundation, who am I going to be and what am I going to create? What is this year going to be about? We can get very excited about all the ways that we can be in the world. Like maybe I'll finally start moving in this way, or I'll start pursuing this creative avenue, or I'll start meeting up with my friends more. We might have these kind of ideas in our head. But I think it's really important that we don't sacrifice our future selves to these goals, and that we don't also sacrifice our current self to those goals as well. If it's something that does not feel natural to ourselves in this moment, why do we think 3 months from now it's going to feel foundationally more true? Of course, we're always changing beings, and we can discover new elements of ourselves over time. And of course, we can create new habits if that's something that's feeling natural to us or important to us. That's all really good. However, I think that this Capricorn season is actually about accepting us as we are. If you know that if you overschedule your calendar with meeting up with a whole bunch of friends and community members, and you know that you overschedule that and it's like a month down the line, so you're like, it'll be fine, and then you get there. And then every time you have to cancel about 80% of them. And then you just feel bad about it. And then you feel like I'm failing this goal I've set for myself. I'm disappointing people. That is like a place where we're sacrificing our current self and our future self to a goal that we think we need to pursue. I think this is a really powerful time to get really honest, about those patterns and to stop setting goals that will keep us in that loop of guilt or shame, or like we just can't keep up. What feels like it's a pace to you and your foundation that you actually feel like you'll want to show up at too. They did these studies with rats. There's a famous study that has to do with learning this idea of learned helplessness. So they'd give these rats impossible tasks. And what eventually happened is the rats just stopped doing anything. They stopped going for anything. And even if the researchers would leave a piece of food out, the rat would just be like, well, it doesn't matter anyway because I can never accomplish anything. And so many of us treat ourselves that way. And the traditional interpretation of Capricorn is often about overachievement, overscheduling, over-determination of our time and our energy and our skills to where we feel a hopelessness. And I think this is an important season to set ourselves up for tasks that we will consistently feel like showing up to, for schedules that won't feel like when we get up we have full body dread and like, I don't want to go through this week. I think that's a really, really important part of the visioning of Capricorn, and actually that foundational inner parenting energy that Capricorn brings. Capricorn's ruled by Saturn, the planet of restriction. And a lot of times we think about that and it's like, oh gosh, punishment, taking away dessert, no more fun. But for me, that idea of restriction also involves the way we think about what we have to get done in a day. It's also about, simplifying down so that we don't have that learned helplessness feeling of constantly giving ourselves impossible mountains to climb and then wondering why we feel sad and empty inside at the end of the day. So those are the two big themes that really came up very clearly for me as I sat with this Capricorn season. Interestingly enough, during this Earth sign season, we are going to be working with a lot of energy in watery signs. And I think that's really fascinating to think about, this idea of building a foundation from the hidden world, from our internal world, building from the inside out, rather than thinking about forcing through and self-motivation through practical tasks and getting it done, and working from behind the scenes. So I'm just going to talk through 3 things that are going on in early January that really set the tone for this Capricorn season. So right after New Year's, on January 3rd, we have Venus entering Pisces. And Venus is going to be moving between Pisces and Aries for the first, almost 5 months of the year, 4 months, 5 months of the year, because Venus is going to be having a retrograde starting in Aries on March 2nd and moving back into Pisces again on April 13th. So as Venus enters Pisces this Capricorn season, we're beginning a journey with Venus that has to do with the modality through which we create, through the way that we think we need to get things done, through this process of working from the inside out and really getting to know ourselves. So I think it also relates to the themes I was just talking about with Capricorn, where it's like, what is my foundation? What really does feel true to me? And is this like overscheduling and being honest with myself about that? How is that changing and shifting? Venus is going to amplify those themes and those conversations. On January 6th, we also have Mars shifting, is still moving through that retrograde phase as he has been through this whole Capricorn season so far, and will be leaving Leo and moving back into Cancer, so another water sign placement. And we have a whole chat about Mars retrograde. If you haven't checked that out yet, check it out. But what I will say about Mars retrograde in Cancer is a lot of times you'll hear words like frustration and passive aggressiveness and all of that. But for me, this time, as we move through this second half of Mars retrograde, is about emotional processing and giving ourselves peace about the past, about old family dynamics, about past versions of ourselves, and processing that. And it may not be like this feeling like you're externally conquering all of your goals and making everything happen. It may not feel like that, but I think what's important here, and a really helpful reminder, I'm going to be needing this reminder again once it's early January, that what's going on behind the scenes emotionally with that processing, with that connection point is really, really powerful. It's going to change the way the rest of the year elapses and opens and moves out. And so this is a profound time of inner healing, inner calibration, inner clarity, clarifying what we really want to pursue and what we will no longer be pursuing, and taking care of ourselves. If you're somebody who has been through a lot of burnout in recent years, or other physical, emotional, mental health struggles, this is a really powerful time of incorporation and understanding so that we can move forward from a foundation that feels sustainable for us, for the sensitive spirits. I think it's going to be really beautiful. And then finally, on January 12th, the North Node is going to shift out of Aries and into Pisces, which means the South Node is going to be moving into Virgo. So it's going to be, the Pisces Virgo axis is very spiritual. It really reminds me of just the process of spirituality itself, like Pisces being the great divine connectedness, and Virgo being kind of how it feels to be in devotion to that, and the conversation that goes on between these two. So it's a really interesting conversation. The nodes stay in a pair of signs for about a year and a half. So we're just beginning that. Once again, I'm going to have a whole chat about this, but also, once again, working with very watery energy here. And once again, the emphasis is working from behind the scenes. If we're not emotively feeling it, it can't happen completely. I mean, yes, we can make things happen. We can do that manually. Lots of us have done it for many, many years of our lives. The world's been doing that in many ways. But this North Node shift is going to demand that we work from a place of spiritual connectedness. And I know we talk about that. It's a really broad thing to say. I will talk about that more in the conversation about the nodes. But my point being here, you can see that these shifts going on during Capricorn season are all about this watery, intuitive process, and how much that affects the way we think about our foundation, the way we think about our goals, the way we think about our value in the world. So it is a really, really potent, magical Capricorn season. It's working in a very unique way that not every Capricorn season works. So I'm really curious to see how it's feeling. How are you feeling? Are you feeling that very different quality of energy that has started to move through since November? I think I'm preparing to step into Capricorn season as I sit here to chat with you all, and really feeling that strange sense of shift and mystery revealing itself, and kind of getting to know myself all over again. I feel like I'm meeting parts of myself that have been with me since I was a little baby, like as far as what I love to create and what just brings me joy, and also parts of myself that have maybe been, hidden in the subconscious, hidden in the energetic realm, that are just waking up. And that's a lot of emotional processing. It turns out it takes a lot of energy to to do that deep digging. So I'm curious to hear how you're feeling. 10 of Cups came out, and I kind of love that. That card is just about appreciation and witnessing, and how powerful that is in making anything new. 10 is so interesting in tarot too, because it's an ending beginning energy. So it's like about culmination as well as beginnings. And whenever I see that rainbow, I always think these people are really appreciating the journey they've just been on. And that rainbow is also this like doorway, this invitation into the next land, into the next vision, and like both can be happening at the exact same time. And that's very much the energy. And the Fool, you know what, I feel like I'm just gonna hold it there with those two cards and keep it really, really simple, because the 10 and the 0, we're working with new vision. What I think about with this, the Fool is one of my favorite energies to work with. It's one that I often need. And the Cosmic Clown, the Court Fool, the Jester, these figures in cultures around the world have been the essential message bringers about what's absurd or needs to change in culture, and taking things lightly that sometimes are taken really seriously, and also turning things on their head and doing things backward to forward, trying things out. And fools are often also associated with deep spiritual knowing. They can kind of see things from a different perspective than our rational mind. And I find that both the 10 of Cups and the Fool are inviting us to play with the way we think about what's super important, what we have to like force our way through, and what isn't. What actually, really, it's okay if you don't complete it. Really, it's okay if you don't make that schedule happen. You know, it's like, it's really okay if you meander around a little bit, or maybe don't know what it's going to look like, or don't have the perfect speech for the cocktail party where you're going to tell people what your job is and who you are and what you do in the world. I think it's actually really interesting that these two cards of dreaminess and vision and playing with our ideas come up in Capricorn season, because like we said at the beginning of this chat, Capricorn is so often associated with practical self motivation and making sure you have discipline. And yet this Capricorn season is inviting us to use those skills that we normally would use to maybe get into self-discipline, to get into visioning, to do those tiny, tiny quantum leaps into different ways of treating ourselves, into scheduling ourselves in ways that actually reflect our energy and our bodies and our souls and our spirits and what works for us, and what could happen if we trusted in that a little bit more. What foundations could we build with that? What kind of self-trust could we build? What kind of inner parenting could we build? What kind of communities and friendships could we build if we were working from that space, if we were treating Capricorn energy with that kind of lens? What kind of success or clarity or goals would start to arise if they were based on those softer lenses? And whenever the Fool comes up, I always think, oh, this is time to reverse my thinking, to play around with, well, I have to get that done, and say, I don't have to get that done. Would I like to get it done? Would I like to try it out? Would I like to do part of it? Would I like to start at the end and maybe do a little bit in the middle, and then maybe I'll finish at the beginning? We don't know. But there's so many ways that you can think about these cards. I'd also say that there is an energy moving through right now of new beginnings, of needing to see and work with the world as it is in new ways. Like, the old ways just aren't working anymore. And I think we're finding that again and again and again. So what do? We have to start using our imagination to think in different ways about our foundations, about our sustainability, and about the way that we belong in this world. So I don't know, I'm really intrigued by this Capricorn season. I just have this feeling that I'm going to be doing a lot of emotional processing, but also getting a lot of clarity. I want to know, how are you feeling as we step into this Capricorn season? If you want to hang out with me more and just explore and learn some of my wild dreaming practices that are kind of my special thing that I create, or you just want to have weekly check-ins and feel supported at this time, I would love to do that with you. You can join me over in my little beautiful, lovely community of sensitive spirits over on Patreon. I am there every single week offering up tools and resources. And right now we are moving through the Wild Dreaming New Year, which will take us through 4 weeks of wild dreaming practices that are non-linear, not about setting goals or self-discipline, but about really getting to know our true soul song. So I'd really love to see you there in those sessions and offering those gifts and tools to you, because they have been so important to me. So if you are looking for a space to enjoy, I highly recommend checking that out. And then of course, I love it when you're here. We are going to talk about Venus. We are going to talk about Mars retro. We are going to talk about those nodes shifting into Pisces and Virgo, because that's going to be a big one. It's going to be such a different feel in the world as we work with those energies. So with that being said, I hope you have a beautiful Capricorn season, a beautiful shift into the new year. I will see you back here for our next chat, and I'm sending you all so much love.